Hi, everybody. Hi, my name is Dan Phillips, and I'm going to be moderating this session today. We've got a stellar panel with us, and we'll be discussing how best to select the best technology partner for you and in our fast-moving industry. For those of you that don't know me, I have been around the industry for a long time. I spent 6 years as VP Operations at Playtech. Prior to that, I was gaming director at what is now GVC and some of their brands, and I now run my own boutique advisory service. I work globally, focusing on operational support, new market entry, and also around RFPs and M&A, and I also co-host the Big Betting Balagan podcast. So that's me. I have a stellar panel, as I said. I have Mike Chavarella from the Elise Group, Tech Group, sorry. Kresimir Spajek, who's SVP Online Gaming at Hard Rock International. Vic Shrestha, Senior Director of Biz Dev at IGT Play Sports, and Dave McDowell is the CEO of FSB Tech. So to the audience out there, if you have any questions as we go, please drop them into the question box and I'll pick them up either as we go or we'll leave time at the end to do that. So we've got a few topics to get through, and I thought maybe a good starting point, a good kickoff point is really to sort of talk about what are the most important factors. So kind of a big question to start us off. So what are the important factors when you're selecting a betting and gaming partner? I've got my ideas. Maybe we'll pick up on those later. Perhaps maybe Vic, you could start, and maybe if as we go through the panel, guys, if you can maybe just give a brief overview of your backgrounds as well. So Vic, over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Dan. Absolutely. Thanks, Dan. Excited to be here. So from my side, IGT Play Sports, we're live in 15 states as the B2B supplier. Prior to IGT, I was the director of Biz Dev at William Hill. So on the other spectrum, on the B2C operator side. So really, when you evaluate technology suppliers or when an operator is evaluating, to me, there's really three key factors to help guide that decision making. There's obviously many more to think about. But number one, I would say, is product compliance and licensing compliance. Know the companies you're working with from a supplier perspective. And number two, I'd say very high level is that in terms of the product, does it allow you to essentially accomplish what you're looking to do? Is it statewide mobile, on-premise mobile, retail solution, and so forth? And then number three, I'd say, is the technology stack proven and reliable in the market? Can it handle peak performance such as before Super Bowl and so forth? So for me, those are really the three key categories to start evaluating technology suppliers.
Okay, thank you for that. Maybe jump over to Kresimir next. You're coming at it from an operator's perspective, so it'd be good to get your kind of counter on that.
Sure. Just a quick introduction. It's Kresimir Spajek. I'm a Senior Vice President of Online Gaming and Sports Betting for Hard Rock International. I'm with the company for 5 years, and prior to that, I have 10 years of online gaming experience in Europe and in the US. Look, we, in the last 5 years, or 6, 7 years in the US, I believe that I went through multiple RFPs when it comes to the technology choice. First with Boyd, then with Rush, and now with the Hard Rock International. And really, there is not one size fits all. I think that you have to look from yourself as an operator, understand what strengths you have, what goals you have, and what are kind of capabilities that you have in-house and in which stage of the development of the company you are. I mean, looking for a full turnkey solution is probably something that you would do at the very, very beginning. And as you become and grow both your operational experience and revenues, you would probably be looking to bring some of or pieces of technology in-house. So I would say for us, we actually went through all of these processes. We decided first to choose the full turnkey solution, not only from a technology perspective, but also part of the services as well and operations. And now as we reached a certain stage of the development, and as we have built in-house operations, we decided kind of to bring pieces of the technology and development in-house while still kind of choosing the best of breeds, both in terms of scalability, reliability, and flexibility externally.
Thank you, Kresimir. I want to come back to the kind of in-source versus outsource later on, but I think there were some good points there. Maybe Mike actually go next for me. just on that point.
Okay, well, first, thank you very much for having me here, Dan. And just a quick snap on my background. I've been with the company for the better part of 6 years now. And prior to that, I was in a completely different industry, and I was given the opportunity to enter this business. And it's been a terrific opportunity since that time. I look forward to growth opportunities that are going down to the United States. It's a great market, as well as the Canadian potential as well. So just my view on this question is that players, operators, tech providers, and regulators form a linear relationship to provide a safe and regulated landscape. So when you're asking to look at a betting platform provider and what the differentiators are, there's a number of key fundamental pillars that are part of regulated sports betting. So one of those pillars is the anti-money laundering. Does the system have the ability to detect, analyze, and report responsible gaming and self-exclusion on both the player's end and also the provider to protect from problem gambling, because it's gives the entire industry a black eye when there's a problem. And then also risk management is another pillar, where we must maintain a sustainable business while providing a fair product for players. And lastly is internal controls for monitoring each aspect of the three first pillars. So if the platform provider is already strong in these pillars, then the bespoke differentiators are secondary, because we can all provide attractive feature-rich products, with even unique tools that are built right in. But ultimately, we are working in regulated space. So the betting platform, certainly, if it's already built in regulated space, it's built to handle the connection to the regulator, and that's very important in terms of the selection process.
Great, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Dave, give us your views.
Great,
and introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So, hi, everyone. I'm Dave McDowell, CEO and co-founder of FSB Technology. I've been working in regulated online gaming markets for 20 years now. Back in 2000, I wrote a business plan and started a company with the remit to build a financial services platform for content developers, and that company, which is now known as NASDAQ listed GAN, actually one of the sponsors here. I started in 2001. We designed what later became known as a PAM, or a product agnostic platform. And the CTO and I left in 2007 to start FSB together, because we could see that in-play betting was going to fundamentally change the industry, that live data coming from the stadium would get faster, more detailed, more reliable. It would drive real-time pricing models. And those real-time algorithms would fundamentally change the technology stack that you need to put in place to run a modern sports betting platform. As it turns out, it would be another 5 years before the data feeds would actually be reliable enough to do that. And we launched our first fully managed trading service in 2013. And that was one of the earliest implementations of what's now become quite a de facto business model in the U.S. market, which is that fully managed service. And I guess coming across to the actual question about what's the most important factor when choosing a sports betting supplier, for me, I think it's, Vic and Mike, I think, laid out a number of features that are all really important. It's really difficult to say what feature is the most important. Of course, it's got to work. It's got to be reliable. Completely agree with what Kresimir said, though, and the message that we're trying to get across to prospective customers is to understand the balance between control and efficiency. And we all know that outsourcing is a much more efficient model, but we also know that keeping control internally can help an operator to better differentiate your services. And there are two very quick examples of that. Very specific examples I'd like to share. And the first is, if you look at the way sports betting services are typically provided today, you've either got a managed trading system, which is quite a black box. And again, I think Kresimir said it's great for when you're getting started. But then you immediately go way the other end of the spectrum to an enterprise system. And that's great if you're a tier 1 operator and you can buy all of your data and you've got a 200-person trading team. But what we're trying to discuss and promote is more of a hybrid trading system where you can actually take certain aspects of the sports book, like managing your own NFL lines. And with just 1 or 2 traders, you can actually take control of a certain aspect of the sports book and use that to differentiate your product better in the marketplace. So it's that balance between control and efficiency. And I think exactly the same logic takes place when you're looking at just the business model, and the business model of, should I sell my skin and get a 10-year annuity from a B2C brand, or should I retain control in-house, and should I build up those internal capabilities and launch our launch a business and build up long-term equity value? And I think the models are there to better promote that second opportunity as well. So really the message from me is finding a supplier that has the flexibility to have that balance between control and efficiency.
Yeah, thank you for that. I agree with with all you guys, and I think that you've given all the the kind of the base answers, and I think covered lots of ground. But for me, as an old operator, at heart as well, I want to know that the roadmap is strong, and what you're looking at in terms of future technologies, how we're going to leverage whatever is the new iPhone 12, et cetera, ability, 5G power. I think you've all talked about differentiation. Actually, I want to come on to that in a moment. And you've obviously all focused on the regulator focus as well. No one's really talked about pricing either, and maybe we'll come back to that. Actually, you know what? Let's do that now. From an operator perspective and from a supplier perspective, where does pricing sit? It's always that kind of topic that no one wants to talk about. I'll throw that open. Maybe Kresimir, go on, because you're the operator here. Where is pricing on the?
I mean, pricing is mostly a marketing-related product, I would say, right? Depends. You have to be very careful what you do and how you price things. And, our idea about this is to take a stance on the events that we believe are right for us and heavily promote these events with probably a favorable pricing in comparison with everybody else. And, the second thing in regards to this is just the depth of the offering. So you cannot take a stance on each and every event or each and every market. At least this is our opinion. But it also depends, what Dave was saying, how many actually traders you have in-house. I mean, if you are the size of Bet365 or somebody which have a humongous trading team, you probably can enlarge the depth and take a stance on variety of the events and markets. When it comes to what most of the actual US operators are, beside a couple of big ones, you have to pick and choose and use these smartly and focus on events which are actually going to make a difference, while the others are just going to be part of the overall offering. But for me, as I see, it's definitely part of your positioning, right? Brand and marketing positioning.
Okay. Anyone else want to chime in on that before we move on?
Yeah, I'd love to. So it's, for us, I think what we see is operators who want to promote their own strategy. And so again, price is part of the strategy of the operator. We've seen some very successful operators going with a low margin, high volume model, and we've seen some try to replicate that and go out of business. At the same time, over here in the UK, we've seen Skybet, one of the best examples of somebody who's done incredibly well, and their pricing is from a consumer point of view not great, but they were one of the fastest growing sports books over the last decade in the UK, and it just goes to prove that it's not all about price. It's much more about customer experience and how you're using pricing. If you're going to go up onto an odds comparison site, you can be very tactical, and you can just change the individual prices on certain events that you want to draw more money on. So I think it's important to have control over it, but to recognize it is very much a sort of a marketing strategy that you want to execute.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I can add a little bit to that too, Dan. I think I touched a little bit upon it without getting too deep in the woods there. So pricing is really is a function of multiple things, like David and Kresimir have just mentioned. But it's also, we also have to keep in mind, outside of the minutia of pricing the product itself, is we have to stay competitive. At the end of the day, we're competing with the customer. The customer is coming in to take your money, and that's what a sports bet is. So basically, you've got to be sharp on your pricing, but at the same time, you have to be a commercially viable business. Okay, so
Sure.
So you have to find you've got to find that balance. Okay, so that's really the only thing. But David and Kresimir have kind of indicated properly. So.
Okay. I think, for me, it's, for me as an operator, I would want to differentiate. I think you guys have answered, all of those, or certainly some of the factors around how you would differentiate. I think one of the things we didn't really touch on, maybe we'll come back to it, is just around, multi-channel support. Maybe that will come into future area, when we talk about sort of core technology. But sort of taking this topic on, and I think we've all kind of alluded to it. When we look at the in-source versus the outsource model, and I think Dave and Kresimir mentioned it specifically. We have now power brands out there, and we have power groups. I use GVC and Flutter, and maybe Caesars and Hills, fall into that category. These are operations that were operators. They've now bought or acquired technology companies. They're building their own platforms. They're building their own core products. Is that healthy for the industry? Or is it important so you can differentiate, and as you guys have already said, have kind of full control. So I think this is a trend that we're going to see more of, but obviously interested to see what the panel think. Maybe Mike go first this time, please.
Sure. I guess this question is, could blossom into something a little more long-winded. But the old adage, you can't be all things to all people. Even we use outsourcing at Ellis in certain areas of specialty. Even the data providers can't give us the best data on all specialized sports. We need to have a variety of suppliers. In my view, insourcing should be strategic. Where you could leverage certain unique factors around the business, and they're better served with a direct line of sight to the source. And it goes hand in hand for product improvement and go-to-market speed. If you have to outsource everything, you're really at the liberty of their internal operations, whoever's doing that work for you. And if I can give an example of how we leverage this concept. In the regulated Italian market, we're both B2B operator and we own our own technology stack. So this gives us extraordinary flexibility. It allows us to meet the street demand by coding the product to what the players want, rather than us creating a fanciful feature that really nobody uses. So this allows us to control also the error correction more fluidly. Good example, when we were using a third-party provider, we realized that they have other clients and customers. So whenever there was a problem, you take a number and you wait in line while the games go on. So there's a lot of pluses and minuses to that process of insourcing or outsourcing. But again, it's this is where we learned a lot about scalability and architecture and the key roles that they play in the business. So we brought it in-house, and now we're able to leverage that talent to what we plan to do in the United States.
Okay, so you got a hybrid model, effectively.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, yeah. So maybe throw that over to Vic then. How do you see that? Obviously IGT. Lots of companies in sort of all areas of the industry. Is this something that you're seeing more of from your customer base or potential customer base?
Yeah, so for the really large vertically integrated type companies that are really aiming to do that, I believe it makes sense, right? Because they want to control their destiny. They're spending a ton of money on acquiring customers and so forth. But for the majority of, let's say, the mid-size or tribal operators or even commercial operators, it really doesn't make sense to insource and spend the money on doing the D&D, spending the millions and millions of dollars to really have a working platform. So I do believe it makes sense for these, the FanDuels, the DraftKings of the world that are going out there and acquiring and so forth, or have their own stack, such as William Hill creating their own. So it makes sense for the large guys. For the mid-sized to smaller guys, it makes much more sense to outsource, just from a pure P&L standpoint.
Okay, Dave.
Yeah, I might take a slightly different view on this one. Obviously, I'm going to answer that you should be outsourcing. Obviously, as a B2B supplier, I've got a slightly biased opinion, but I think there's a big difference between knowing how to use the tools and knowing how to build the tools. And I think, having been in this industry for quite a long time, we've seen a number of train wrecks, quite frankly. William Hill wrote off, I think, 23 million pounds 10 years ago trying to build their own sports book. And we know Ladbrokes wrote off a ton of cash. Blue Square did as well. I think everybody likes to point to Bet365 and say that they're better because they're a technology company. And I think that's true to some extent. But I actually like to point at the entire industry in the UK and say, well, actually, you know what? If you had a better, healthier relationship with your supplier, you would have been able to compete. And I think outsourcing, when it's done right, with a partner that you can trust and that you believe in the roadmap and you're working together to define that roadmap, a B2B supplier should be more efficient at building something, as long as it's not a time and materials business model. If it's a true software as a service business model, that will be more efficient for the market, or for the operator. And the most important thing, in my opinion, is for an operator to put all of their energy and all their resources into marketing, into customer acquisition and retention. And when they have to turn away from that to fix tech problems or to deal with a supplier that didn't deliver something, it's pulling their effort away from growing their business. And for me, what I want to do is I want to make sure that all of our partners can focus on growing their revenues rather than having to deal with technology.
Okay, so you're talking about relationships. I spent, as I said, 6 years at Playtech, and had some amazing times and had some very challenging times as well. We all know that the operator wants everything yesterday. With respect to the operators out there watching, listening, and the balance, I guess, is that the software supplier has so many customers, and how do you prioritize those? So I can see why a supplier would want to take it on board. I do take your point, Dave, that certainly there are lots of examples of sort of train crashes out there. Krasimir, let's pass that over to you and get your view.
Sure. I mean, look, I agree and disagree with everything what my colleague says, right? Again, it boils down to your position and in which phase of the development you are and what your strategy is, where your strengths are. It's really, you cannot tailor it made and say this is the ideal scenario. The truth to be told, if you look at all tier 1 operators, they have 95% of the things in-house, right? If you look at Flutter, if you look at GVC, if you look at Bet365, they almost own all technology, and only what they outsource is pieces of the services. So even the biggest operators outsource something, and this is mostly certain services which are either marketing oriented or whichever KYC, geolocation, and so on and so forth. So you never really own the full technology in-house. For a mid-tier operators, I also agree with Dave, it's very, very hard to build kind of technological expertise and to build something which is first and foremost scalable and reliable, because this is the start of all operation. And once you have something which is scalable and reliable, then you can focus on innovations and differentiation. A different approach where you're focusing on innovation differentiation without satisfying the basic of operating business is not good at all. And we are actually going through all of these stages. In our case, we want to focus on everything what is consumer-centric, everything what consumers can touch and feel, because this is what we do. We want to provide our customers an authentic experiences and try to replicate a lifestyle of a hard rock brand digitally. That's why what we are doing currently, we have taken over the front end, which is basically the website and apps, and we are managing that part of the experience, together with some services which I think are crucial for the for the customer experience. Will we sometimes in the future, if we grow to be $1 billion revenue company, think about having the full technology in-house? This could be a possibility as well. But that's why I'm saying you need to be realistic in which stage is your company, what you want to focus on, because it's very, very hard to be great in everything. Great in technology, great in operations, great in marketing. You need to kind of decide what you want to focus on and slowly but surely build other capabilities in-house.
Yeah, I would agree with that entirely, Krasimir. I think that actually what this does arguably is give power to the software guys, the guys who are coming up with the great new content. Because if the brands have their own platforms, actually what they're going to need is a flow of great content. And I think actually there is a lot of great content out there right now. I'm going to sort of jump around a little bit from what I had agreed with the guys beforehand in terms of questions, but kind of leading on from that, I think the kind of natural progression then is based on everything that we just spoke about in that last section, is to look at where maybe some of those gaps are now. So you guys have great platforms and you have great product, and generally speaking, I think the industry is pretty good on a technology front. But once you get past maybe the commodity, so there's great sports books, there's great casino, there's great live dealer. And especially, when we look at the US market, from my own experience of operating, in the US and sort of working there, arguably, that the US is a long way behind the rest of the world when it comes to payment solutions, mobile apps, fintech, specifically. So, where are those tech gaps? As you guys see it, and what do we need to do to fix it? Maybe Dave, go first on that one for me.
Yeah, I think it's well put. At the heart of what we're offering as a product is, everybody's got the same thing. Everybody can have access to 30 or 40,000 live events every single month. Everybody has access to, I think we've got 4,000 casino games plugged into our platform, right? So everybody's got access to that same content, and it becomes difficult to differentiate yourself. And I think really with putting all the focus on the consumer experience, for me, that's first and foremost the most important thing. I think, again, like Krasimir said, I think he mentioned his organization was taking control over the user experience. So having a supplier that's got a really solid API that you can take control of the front end and the user experience and own that experience, I think is really important to be flexible from the supplier to offer that. But I think one of the things that the industry, especially the sports betting side of the gaming industry, is notoriously poor at is real-time data analytics, and business intelligence. And it's actually pulling data out of the system. And for me, I mean, I guess if we kind of turn our attention to 2021 and where is the battleground, how do you differentiate your services? It really is on using systems to get real-time flow of information off of your platform, so you know what a customer is doing right now and communicating them in real time in a personalized way. And I think if you look at everything in our product roadmap, we're making sure that we've got self-service betting terminals, and we're really driving hard on our retail offering. But we're also trying to drive really hard on being able to differentiate ourselves through the sort of the real-time data and personalization. And also taking more control over pricing models so that we can continue to build unique products like bet builders and differentiate ourselves on a product by combining markets in a different way.
Okay. So maybe same question to Vic, but maybe, so what are your customers telling you? What are they saying to you, are the current technical gaps or concerns that they have?
Yeah, so I mean, for the key thing is, of course, there's a lot of great third-party integrations to be done, right? So let's say, for example, widgets, or even let's say micro markets and betting and so forth, and doing these integrations. So really having a product roadmap that's robust and really integrating with these leading providers in their certain categories. So payments is a great topic you mentioned. I think the US is really lagging behind there, as you mentioned. So that's going to be, we definitely need to see an evolution of the payments side in the US to really bring us to the next level. And so to me, it's really those two key categories, making sure the integrations are there, continuing that from as a supplier perspective, and of course, from the payments perspective, just getting up to the rest of the market that's out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great point, Vic. If I could jump on what Vic just said, that Dan, like he's talking about the payments. I mean, clearly this industry has a lot of work to do internally in getting the message, the connection with the bankers and the processes that go on there, because unfortunately there's no matter how great we can get our technologies up and what Dave talked about in terms of data extraction, all of those elements are there. But unfortunately, if we can't deliver the product because we're having a lot of headwind as relates to banking and payment processing and so on, it becomes very, very challenging to even offer the product at the street level. I guess from my perspective, the only thing, speaking again from our experience, there's a massive market for high-speed betting at retail locations. Dave mentioned earlier about working on, providing the retail side and the SSBTs. We obviously want, we're experiencing that because we've got a very deep market in the Italian space, and the Italians like to do their betting, and they don't like everybody knowing, their private identification, so they like to have the ability to do a lot of this, a lot of the things that they can do on a mobile, they want to be able to do it in a retail environment. So that's kind of like what I see as some pretty interesting stuff. And we created an auxiliary wagering system that seems to be gaining a lot of traction in that market. So it's unique things like that, extracting data like the panel's already talked about. Giving the user experience, as Kresimir indicated, these are sort of all a big envelope of what we'd like to try to be able to do as a technology provider, and be able to handle the part about being able to provide that to the customer if they're able to pay for it. You know what I mean? That's also like Vic was talking about, the payment process is an issue.
Okay, Kresimir, any other comments on that?
Yeah, look, for us, it's all about data. It's all about gaining as much as possible information about the consumer, using this data in a very, very strategic way to basically deliver the best possible product and experiences for the customers. For us, what we did, we concentrated of creating an experience for a customer to be as seamless as possible. To give you kind of an example, we created a single sign-up process, which means either if you sign up at brick-and-mortar casino and our free-to-play products or real money gaming products, we have a single account and can switch in between different products. We have a single loyalty program which rewards customers in all three verticals and can be exchanged. And we have even a single wallet, which means that you can move money to the digital wallet to brick-and-mortar experiences, including the slot machines on the floor. So this has been our focus. In general, I think that when it comes to sports, the product is much more developed and much more diverse. When it comes to the casino, it's all about the games, and there hasn't been much innovation beside the live dealer in it. I think that we actually introduced a quite significant innovation in February this year, where we launched for the first time ever so-called live slots, which is a possibility actually to remotely control and play a slot machine from a casino floor, which was specifically tailored for brick-and-mortar customers which haven't trusted the digital gaming product. And this was kind of an onboarding for them. And we see significant results in regards to this, because trust is actually the main attribute and that customers value when it comes to the gaming operators and gaming products in general.
Okay. I think, we've got about 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we get through this. Just a shout out to the audience as well. If there's any questions anyone would like, please kind of post those now. Thanks guys for the answers on that last area. I think there's a sort of a common thread there around data and perhaps things like machine learning and AI needs to come in. I think slightly concerning that the payments area, fintech, etc., is somewhat linked to the banking sector, so that's going to be a sort of slower one. But I really think areas around mobile are in our control. And when I look at the mobile apps in the US versus the rest of the world, I think there's a lot more work to be done. That's just my view, of course. So just moving on to final sort of topic is something that I call buyer's remorse, and I've discussed it with my colleagues on the Big Bet and Ballaghan podcast a couple of times. That we're now 2.5 years post PASPA. There was a big kind of gold rush, for want of a better phrase, to get deals done. Big operators were signing up with providers who were licensing first, and good luck to them. But now what we're seeing, 2.5 years later, is Scientific Games building up. Vic and the guys at IGT, Playtech have now licensed, in the US. So, do we think that we're going to see a shift from the early adoption to the bigger brands which are out there, which maybe dominate the rest of the gaming world? I'm going to throw that one to Kresimir firstly, and secondly because he's just been through a migration process, and obviously maybe he can't share too much with us on that specifically, but I'd be interested to get his views. So if you guys can maybe give me like a minute each on that, because we've got about 5 or 6 minutes left of our time.
I mean, if you're referring the situation 5 years ago and today is very different, right? And, now we have 23 states which legalize sports betting, and it's very important, the speed to the market. And at that point of time, we had maybe 2 markets active and nobody really know what is going on. So I think it's logical that you change your strategies and try to adapt and try to find a supplier that you believe are going to be reliable and follow kind of your growth path and your ideas behind your product and positioning basically of the product. And that's why this is the main reason why these things are happening. The second, you also see that some suppliers have put more efforts into basically bringing their product up to date and adjusting into the regulatory environment in the US. And some players just haven't been able to deliver this. So I think this is normal. Most of the contracts have anyway been signed for 3 years, and now these contracts are expiring and people are looking for better alternatives, something which is more suitable to their strategy. And same with us, right? We are looking now for 3 things which I said: scalability and reliability, which is especially important in one of the big markets happen like California, New York, or Florida. And the second, you're looking for some level of flexibility even within these big platforms which are scalable and reliable, which can let you kind of differentiate and position yourself in the way that you think will benefit the most to you. So this is kind of a general overview.
Okay, maybe Dave, go next on that one.
Yeah, I think that's. I think it was very well put. I think that I love the term buyer's remorse. I've used it a few times myself, and I think really it comes because there's quite often a mismatch between what somebody thinks they're getting and what somebody's trying to sell you. And I think, quite frankly, nobody knew what was going on 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I think a lot of operators have educated themselves, and they've got better choices that they can take today than they had before. It's interesting to hear Kresimir say, speed to market has been, speed to market has always been, I think, one of the things that's been on the highest of every RFP that we've seen, and I think that there's obviously, from my side of things, a bit of a fear that some of these larger operators, because they're there, will just keep winning more business. But I think that as operators continue to get better educated, and as modern technology is better understood, and companies like FSB are coming into the UK with experience of working in a dozen different regulated markets already. For example, we just did the GLI 33 and passed it in the first go. There's literally nothing that we had to fix. I think there's great technology out there that's coming into the US. I think that 2021 and the next couple of years is going to see sort of a better class of offshore technology coming into the UK or into the US market.
Okay.
I could agree with Dave on all those points there too, Dan. Sorry to jump in, but I can definitely agree with David. He had the very similar points, and I know I'm not alone in my thinking here that the U.S. market, despite the fact that it has a rapid growth in the first 2.5 years, as you pointed out, it's going to be a 10 to 15 year kind of cyclical trend where we're going to see some stabilization over that period. Like David had just pointed out, we're going to see some new technologies come in. I mean, there's we built Ellis for this market, waiting specifically for what Krasimir just described, which is the renewal cycle. We want to be ready. We are ready, and we expect to be performing at that point.
Okay. Vic, anything?
Yeah, no, I was just going to mention, at IGT, we're fortunate to enter Nevada pre-PASPA repeal, so we had a head start. For one, I'm definitely excited to see these new B2B suppliers that are entering the U.S. market, not necessarily new to the global market, but to see the innovation that it's going to force, to see things improving, optimizing, right? How does infrastructure get cheaper? How do we do these things in a faster way? So I'm excited to see the competition and to really see where the market continues to grow, where the industry goes over the next few years. So yeah, nothing additional to add too much, but I agree with what everybody said.
I think you all answer that very, very politically correctly. Personally, I think we're going to be. I think all the big guys are going to be coming in. They're all going to be probably heading into some kind of price war. And I think coming back to some of the other conversations around services and around delivery and around products and around data and around the ability to scale, I think are going to be crucial, and I think there's going to be a lot more changes to come. But I guess time will tell. So we've kind of come to the end of our time. I'm just going to check through the questions. There was a question which came in from Jim Barbie, just coming back to the payments area, wanting to ask a little bit more around what we meant by around advancements in the US which are needed. From my perspective, I was referring to sort of mobile pay and sort of mobile wallets. Do you guys have any other views on sort of payment processing areas that you'd like to sort of pick up on?
I just came from a payment panel, so I think
give us 10 seconds.
when it comes to the payments, it's all about the credit cards. In Europe, 85% of all the transactions are about the credit cards. Currently, the biggest issuing banks still do not allow the processing of 7955 code, which is a gaming code, and that's why we have to be creative. And currently, you have a spread of payments, which is 30% credit and debit cards, 30% prepaid card option, and 30% basically ACH with other methods supplemented. So hopefully, with the size of the business and legalization in different states, issuing banks are going to start approving gaming transactions. And I think this will be the biggest change, because this is also going to increase the conversion rates and in such a way value of the customers and size of the industry.
Absolutely. Agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
Okay.
Kind of goes to the point I was trying to make earlier. Sorry. Carry on.
Go.
No, I was just going to say, just to dovetail real quickly. I know we're light on time, but just dovetails off of what I was saying earlier. It was, I'm finding a lot of headwind from some of the major banks. They need to, we need to maybe have some conferences with them as well to kind of get them up to speed on our industry, the regulated side of it.
Cool. All right, guys. Does anyone have any sort of final sort of comments? Anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to get off your chests around this topic of technology and partners?
Yeah. I've got one thing. I'd actually like to pick up on something that Mike said right at the very beginning in his opening comments, and I think it is it's something that we're going to see a lot more of. If we look at the UK market, which is one of the most highly regulated markets out there, there's been a very strict push towards better AML, better safe gaming. Operators have an obligation to ensure that they understand not only who is their customer, but to interact with their customer if they're showing any signs of problem gambling, and the operator has to prove that their systems for interacting with customers are effective, and that means having multiple ways of identifying these behaviors and multiple ways of contacting and interacting with customers. And I think that's something that I know the topic's sports betting, but I think when it comes to platform technology, I just wanted to reiterate that fact that Mike said AML and safe gaming tools are one of the more important features. I think that's going to come high on the agenda of regulators in 2021 across America, and anybody who's looking at a platform or working with a platform should probably try and get out in front of those two issues.
Cool, very good. All right, guys, we've kind of run over by 5 minutes, and I think we see you guys need to move on to the next panel. So, thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Right.
Thanks to the audience.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks,
everyone. Thanks, Dave. Vice Mayor Vic.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye now. Thank you, guys.